Hello and welcome to Tony's podcast. Today's episode is one that touches on critical events, policies, and the global consequences of leadership. With the recent election resulting in President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris losing their bid for a second term, I wanted to dive into one of the possible reasons: rising global nuclear tensions. For many, this issue isn't just abstract foreign policies, it's a real and present danger. Let's explore how Biden's terms in office may have contributed to a heightened nuclear risk and why this could have been a deciding factor in American voting for a different path forward. Let's start by examining the state of global affairs during Biden administration. Under Biden, the international landscape shifted, particularly in the arena of nuclear arms. Several major players, Russia, China, North Korea, and even Iran, had become increasingly bold in their nuclear posturing. Analysts and experts began to warn that the world was edging closer to a new kind of Cold War, one that felt more volatile and unpredictable. But how did we get here? Many experts argue that Biden's policies, while aimed at fostering peace and diplomacy, inadvertently left certain tension unchecked, allowing adversarial nations to feel emboldened. In some cases, his approach may have been seen as too passive, especially when these countries displayed aggression toward the US and its allies. With nuclear tensions building, Americans felt the strain and uncertainty about the future. President Biden came into office with a promise of restoring diplomacy, aiming for a calm and calculated approach into foreign policies. However, adversaries may have interpreted this approach differently. Countries like Russia, for instance, appear to take advantage of this diplomatic stance. Russian leaders continued nuclear testing and built alliances with other nuclear power, positioning themselves as a counterweight to the West. This approach was intended to ease tension, but instead it led to a perception that the US was stepping back on the global stage. This apparent vacuum allowed nuclear threats to increase, putting the world at risk. As citizens watching this unfold, concerns about the safety and the strength of US foreign policies grew. The sentiment: it's one thing to strive for peace, but it's another to seem passive in the face of growing threats. Adding to these tensions were Biden's interaction with key allies, particularly in NATO. While Biden sought to strengthen alliance, there were also frictions, especially around funding, strategy, and the handling of international crises. Some allies were concerned about Americans' ability to act decisively under his leadership, fearing that this perceived hesitation could undermine NATO's unified stance against nuclear threat. This fraction created rippled effects. If Americans' allies began doubting U.S. leadership, that lack of confidence reverberated worldwide. By the end of Biden's term, it wasn't just adversaries who were flexing their nuclear capabilities, but allies who were questioning America's ability to lead. This perception of weakened alliances may have led many Americans to seek a leadership shift, one they hoped would renew confidence in global stability. North Korea and Iran also became significant points of concern. North Korea resumed testing missiles capability of reaching U.S. shores, while Iran's nuclear ambitions seemed to intensify. Biden administration attempted diplomatic engagement, but critics argued that these efforts weren't enough to curb these countries' ambitions. For many Americans, the sight of missiles tests and aggressive rhetoric from North Korea and Iran brought back memories of past crises. The outcome: Americans started to feel that these countries were unafraid of the US, that the policies of Biden and Harris did not do enough to deter or neutralize threats. This perceived lack of control over escalating nuclear ambitions worldwide became a point of anxiety, which undoubtedly impacted how people felt about their leadership. While foreign policies and nuclear tensions were critical, domestic issues also played a role. Many Americans felt that Biden administration had neglected pressing domestic concerns in favor of diplomatic effort abroad. Economic instability, rising inflation, and a lack of focus on critical issues at home led to frustration. People wanted a leader who would prioritize American strengths and stability, both domestically and internationally. The sense that domestic issues were sidelined left many feeling vulnerable, especially with nuclear tensions on the rise. In times of international crisis, a strong, stable economy is essential for resilience. Without this foundation, fear and insecurity about the future only grow. While these mounting issues, it's not surprising that American voters ultimately decided to make a change. Biden administration was marked by well-intentioned diplomatic efforts, but some unintended consequences. Rising nuclear threats, strained alliances, and a shake domestic foundation proved too much for voters. Americans choose a new path, seeking leaders who they believe can resort confidence in U.S. leadership on the world stage and focus on the country's needs. The message was clear. While diplomacy and dialogue are valuable, there's a pressing need for assertive, balanced leadership. Americans wanted leaders who could tackle both foreign threats and domestic challenges with equal resolve. In the end, the choice to vote out President Biden and Vice President Harris may have been driven by a deep-seated desire for change, a call for a more assertive response to growing global tensions, particularly nuclear risks, and a renewed focus on strengthening America at home. Americans have spoken, and now a new chapter begins. As we move forward, let's hope that the lessons from these years help us steer away from the edge of bring us closer to a safer, more secure future.